Losch model of central place theory is more realistic than Christoller's. Examine. What do you know about Losch theory? How it is different from Losch has given improvement for Weber also and Christoller also.
Just consider infinite k values and sectoral development, developed sectors. The variety of goods and services were also wider. So he categorized it in luxury goods versus poor goods, and by on that
intra-regional variation.
Intra-regional variations. That's why he has made the sectors rotating and mixing.
In Christoller, he was more confined. Law said that every good has its own influence. It's not like uniform isotropic surface is not like that. So per good influence will be more. So that's where the sectoral model comes. And here he ignored Christoller will be transport, administration. There are other things also.
This is first you begin with the fundamentals. What Christoller talks about. What Christoller talks about is the location of settlements. As per the services. That's why it talks about range of goods, which we have already discussed earlier, and threshold population. Indirectly, if you see, this is nothing but the group of least cost school. That's why he talks about several assumption, isotropic surface and all. What Losch talks about is, in his books, economics of location. So the primary difference is geographical perspective and economic aspect, economic outlook. This, you begin with that. In introduction, you can talk about the location of settlements are dependent on a variety of factors. And settlements, again, study of settlements play a very significant role in understanding not only the human behavior against the environment or in response to the environment, but also the socio-economic conditions of the people living in that area. Then several attempts have been made about to classify, to attempt the settlement location, the pattern and all. Among that, Christoller is the most prominent one. And you come with, Christoller has seen settlements as a geographer, whereas Losch has seen it as an economist. Then you come to the real question. That is, it's more, Christoller's is more, Losch is more realistic than Christoller. So you have to prove this point, that because the question is suggesting that Losch model of central place theory is more realistic than Christoller's. Now he talks about, it's not only about Losch model. So you don't need to explain the Losch model, rather you have to prove the question that it's more realistic. So the first and foremost thing is that the Christoller theory, Christoller has almost ignored the consumers or demand affecting the settlement size and range of goods of services. Whereas Losch has emphasized on demand as well. As the demand can have variations, both regional as well as intra-regional. And because of that, the ideal hexagonal pattern suggested by Christoller is not acceptable in toto to Losch. Christoller suggests superimposition of hexagons, whereas Losch says that it may not be there in the real world. He let the hexagonal move or twist to intersect. And the intersectional point according to him will develop as higher order service provider. Now here you have to say which is more realistic in nature than the rigid aspect of, which is here Losch is more realistic or closer to the practical reality than the rigid quantification of Christoller presentation. Next level, that K is K principle. Losch criticizes the K principle of Christoller and suggests variation in such principles depending upon the level of intersection produced because of consumers. In the hexagon, so he is of the opinion that there can be many Ks and within single principle there can be multiple ways. to identify the higher order location. Right, hexagonal, if you look into what Christoller suggests, that overlapping, superimposition of hexagon. Why? Because he takes equilateral triangle. Losch suggests there is no need to do that. Then all the sides of the hexagon may not necessarily be equal. So the moment that's not equal, it can move somewhere else, and the next one you make, which is slightly like this, it may depend. So here what he is proving, that depending upon the geographical factors as well. In other way, he is taking physical factors more into account than even Christoller, because Christoller believe isotropic surface. For greater assumptions of almost all the assumptions of Christoller's, Losch also appreciate that for any theory to be to apply, there must be certain level of homogeneity and assumptions. But besides, he suggests the practical reality might be totally different from the expected aspect. So that intersection area will be the area having concentration of higher order services. And now it is again a practical reality. For example, in northern plane, if you see, the Christoller theory can definitely be fail on the basis of k is equal to 3 principle or any principle. Let's say suppose you start from Delhi and you go to in the plain area till Allahabad or Patna or Kolkata. At equal interval you will have the number of cities which may be almost equal in size. So a bit of overall nesting is suggested as Losch that may apply more in qualitative terms in the northern plane as compared to Christoller's. Right? Next aspect is that what Christoller suggests, that each higher order, according to Christoller, each higher order service center must possess all the services of the lower order. That's why it's hexagonally equilateral. But Losch suggests not necessary. All the higher order service centers may not necessarily have all the services of the lower order. Right? Again, because we are answering a question, more realistic suggests that it's more realistic. I give example. For example, you will not have the fertilizer shop in a metropolitan city like Connaught Place, in the area of, even all over Delhi if you see, you will hardly find any shop which sells fertilizer, agricultural, because Delhi area doesn't have agricultural activity, so fertilizer shops will almost be unavailable in that area. Now, in the lower order services, maybe higher order services may not exist, but sometimes if you look at the globalized world, a small hamlet, a village in the present scenario might be having higher order services also, for example, a mobile shop. Right, which is relatively a higher order service. Yet you can have, because of the consumer demand, because of the economics of scale. So that overlapping, as suggested by hierarchical order of services and then possession of all the services in the higher order, has been questioned by Losch, which is closer to realistic theory. You can give example. Then what Christoller suggests is the settlement as a single, as a service provider. Losch suggests as an individual also a service provider. Right? Christoller, settlement as a whole as service provider. Losch has suggested he takes individual farmer also as service provider. again more realistic. If you correlate it with geographical thought, it's more humanist in man-environment relationship. In the beginning itself, you can talk about the settlement is one of the most important reflection of understanding of man-environment relationship, right? In the mountainous region, we have a different settlement pattern and types. In the plain areas, we have a different level. Forget about the settlement pattern and types. Even the shape of the roofs are determined by the topographical features or climatic condition of that area. You begin with that. Your answer will be different from the lot whenever it's a question about settlement, because there will be hardly one or two questions on settlement. Here we might be talking about several questions on settlement, but in the examination hall there will be hardly one or two. You might be attempting one question of settlement. You may not be attempting the second. So always start with that, where several geographers have tried in a philosophical manner, some has tried in a practical manner, some has tried in a theoretical manner. Christoller is one of the most prominent to explain man-environment relationship through settlement pattern. It's nothing but man-environment relationship. Settlement, learning settlement. So understanding settlement is one of the most important reflection of man-environment relationship. Then you come to that. Then besides this, Christoller talks about isotropic space and a single hamlet or a single service providing settlement. Any settlement which provides many services have all the services and there is no intra-regional variation. Losch suggests inter and intra-regional variation within the same settlement. You can give hundreds of examples. Like you can take Delhi example. The slum area of Delhi may not have even the lower order services, though Delhi will be considered as one of the highest order service center of India. Yet there will be pockets in Delhi which might not be having even all the services of lower order goods. Right? Then on a larger scale, again we can talk about the pattern of the settlement may reflect huge amount of inter-regional variation and intra-regional variation. So that's how he is much more closer to practical reality. How will you conclude it? Same principle, roughly same, will be applied when you talk about Losch with respect to Weber. He talks about from consumer points of view, demand. That's why profit maximization. And Christoller, Weber and all are least school thought, who talks about the least cost theory, where the transportation cost is beared by the supplier. There may be a possibility that transportation cost is beared by consumer also. So when you take into that account, even in the settlement case, the present very good example in the present day world would be the branded showrooms. The shoe of Reebok you will get at equal price even in the village shop if it is a Reebok shoe house and in Delhi. So transportation cost is zero. So the concept of zero transportation cost can dilute the least cost school. Online shopping, the shipment charge is so less, and especially variation in the shipment charge is very, very less. So that very often may be beared by the supplier itself. Very often you say shipment free. So wherever you ask for it, shipment is free. So the present day example you can put it while dealing with Christoller or Losch, or even individually if you are dealing it while criticizing and talk about. So whenever you talk about, so the present day man-environment relationship has gone a sea change, where the development of transport and communication has brought the dramatic change where man has become a bigger controller of environment. Yet there are a need of, again, the limits to growth and all principle. You can talk about the development of 60s, where man or human is suggested to have a much better harmony with man-environment relationship, which can be reflected in the settlement pattern also. Right? Like nowadays, if you see, the people are, let's say, flood-prone area. So flood-prone area in the past would have been relatively more settled area, more vulnerable for disasters, but nowadays it is not. So that is human control over the environmental wrath. Yet there are again counter effect of that. Like you face global warming, you face recurring diseases, you face health issues, you face other problems because of excessive interference. So जब भी आप conclude करें to bring that harmonious relationship between man and environment relation, because man has definitely acquired huge amount of destructive capacity. So now it is high time let's prove that we are not only a destroyer but also a protector and regenerator. End कीजिए आप सेटलमेंट के पैटर्न में इसका जो होगा कंटेक्स्ट, वो सेटलमेंट पैटर्न के कंटेक्स्ट में होगा. द वे पॉपुलेशन इज इंक्रीजिंग कॉन्टिन्यूसली, वी नीड टू हैव अ मच मोर हार्मोनियस रिलेशनशिप इन द सेटलमेंट पैटर्न एंड द सर्विसेज, which needs a proper and higher level research work for a better understanding of man-environment relationship. Futuristic होकर के उसको conclude कर दीजिए.